we established our first chapbook competition back in 2003, and we were kind of ahead of our time. It was like the first year of the pandemic. I saw how TikTok was going to become important, so we offered something like 10 prizes of €500 each to anybody who would produce a video on TikTok interpreting a poem by a contemporary Irish poet. And nobody took us up. We were ahead of our time on TikTok on that front. But the competition is called Fool for Poetry, the Fool for Poetry competition. And I took that from Sam Shepard's play titled Fool for Love. And we all know people who make a fool of themselves for the sake of love. And Samuel Johnson said long ago that only a fool would write for any reason other than money. And poets generally don't write for money. They write for love of poetry. So that's how we came across the title Fool for Poetry competition. We've been going quite a few years now, and we've published some brilliant poets. I could list the ones that have gone to greater successes, but some of the poets who still have yet to develop beyond that chapbook are also brilliant. But among the people we published in our chapbook series are Victoria Kennefic, whose winning chapbook went on to win a Sabotage Award for Best Chapbook, or just Best Pamphlet as the English call it. I prefer to use the American term chapbook rather than pamphlet, because you can fold an A4 sheet in two, and the dictionary will allow you to call it a pamphlet. And so the word pamphlet for me doesn't carry the substantiality of a chapbook. That's why we call ours chapbooks. And Maya Papa, her chapbook with us, went on to become Poetry Book Society Choice Pamphlet. Victoria Kennefic, as you know, published her collection with Carcanet last year and shortlisted for a lot of major prizes. Maya Papa is about to publish her second full collection with Norton this year. Among the other people whose chapbooks we've published, Roisin Kelly went on to publish a full collection with Bloodaxe, Audrey Malloy with Gallery Press, John Fitzgerald with Gallery Press, Rita Spate with Ireland House. We don't publish full-length collections. We think there are enough great presses in the country that are publishing full collections. Arguably there might be scope for a new press that, with an editorial policy open to what some people might describe from their position as mainstream or traditional poetry. But what I identified as a real gap in the publishing infrastructure of Ireland was a chapbook press, because many publishers, they won't take on a poet unless they have some kind of track record, and it often isn't enough for a poet to be publishing poems in good journals, because an editor of a publishing press doesn't get to read all the journals. But a chapbook is something that's more substantial, it's more front and forward, it attracts reviews that can make a poet seem more marketable to a publisher of full-length books, and that's why we've done our chapbook series. And of course we also do a major single poem competition, the Gregory O'Donoghue Prize. It was founded the year Gregory O'Donoghue died, and that was the reason why we named it after Gregory O'Donoghue. It's so easy for poets to disappear to complete obscurity after they die. I mean, if we take a major figure like Dennis O'Driscoll, his name is not forgotten. I'm often scratching my head wondering how many of the poets who are getting started now reading poems which they hope will help them to expand their own craft, technique and world outlook. I wonder how many of them are actually reading Dennis Idriskell today. So that's why we have the Gregory O'Donoghue Poetry Prize. And there's been some amazing winners of that over the years as well. Both Irish and American winners. John F. Dean won it. The American poet Susie Kwok Kim won it. Maya Papa, as I said, whose second collection is coming out from Norton this year, won it before she ever had a book published. The list is long and prestigious. So we're going to have readings from our prize winners this year, and we're going to have the reading in the order of the second prize winner of the Food for Poetry is Jamie O'Halloran. Then we're going to have a reading by the first prize winner of the Food for Poetry, which is Cian Ferriter, and then we're going to have the winner of our Gregory O'Donoghue Prize, Timothy McBride, and they each have about 18-20 minutes to share with you a substantial body of their work. Jamie O'Halloran is an American-Irish poet living in the west of Ireland. She was at the 2021 Artist in Residence at Bridget's Garden in Galway and is the recipient of a 2021 Agility Award from the Arts Council of Ireland. Hey, the Arts Council of Ireland. Her poems have been nominated 3 times for the Pushcart Prize and appear most recently in the Honest Ulsterman, Crannog, Drawn to the Light, One Hand Clapping, Skylight 47, The Night Heron Barks, and the Daedalus anthology Local Wonders. Jamie's poetry reviews can be found in the Laurel Review, Lit Pub, and the Tupelo Quarterly. Would you please welcome Jamie O'Halloran.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you to the Munster Literature Centre for sponsoring this, and thank you all for being here. I want to thank the judges for selecting my manuscript, and congratulations to Cian and Timothy for their prizes. Really thrilled to be here. I guess this is my first time in Cork. I live in Oughterard in County Galway, and I have some connection to Cork through ancestors and my personal experience when I was 13 and feeling I didn't like where I was and feeling bullied and all these sorts of things. And my mother made the suggestion, and I wrote to the Cork Evening Echo asking for pen pals. I had an excellent response, quite a few correspondents for several years, one of whom we wrote together off and on, for a decade and a half or 2 decades. And then it tapered off, and I don't have those letters anymore. So if anybody knows Anthony Lehane, let me know. And my other connection, my great-grandfather, one of them was from Macroom, and after he emigrated to New York, he received letters from a friend from Cork, R. O'Brien, who had gone to Dublin and did not like being in Dublin. And one of his letters, he said, "I'd sooner have 1 meal a day in Cork than 3 in Dublin." And I know some dubs who won't be happy for me saying that, but I want to tell you about the Corona Connemara was written in January of last year, 2021, and I was participating in the Tupelo Press 3030 project, which required me to write 1 poem a day for 30 days. And so this grew out of it. I didn't intend to write a double crown when it started, but it presented itself by the second poem. And I'll also say it was my first winter in Ireland. We had moved here just as the lockdown happened, as the world locked down, as when we got here. So being January in Ireland, and it was a pretty stormy January, and being restricted by lockdown, the subject matter in the Corona, it was the garden, the weather, the pandemic, and a few headlines that came up at the time. So I'm going to read a few poems from the Crown, and then there's a half a crown. I'll read some of those poems and then some other work. And the booklet has an epigraph from Marilyn Robinson's novel, Lila. What was there in calling a day by a certain name, or thinking of it as anything other than weather? Corona Connemara, 1. If it weren't for the cold, the short days, one might not guess it is winter. All seems green, hedges and fields, even the leafless limbs of beech wear green lichen gloves. Spears of crocus and narcissus poke through unfrozen soil. Each morning, as the sunrise creeps back, I check for the latest risen congregations of stiff foliage where blossoms will open like choristers. Closing in on my first full round of seasons in this new place, I still learn what grows, when and where. Blankets of alder leaves feed the meadow. Wild carrot will tail hyacinth and bluebells. This year of grief isn't ending, but brightening. 2. This year of grief isn't ending, but brightening, with its earlier sun and later moon. We drove to the Bends last evening. The sight of them sifted with the morning snow, the last we'd catch until this next lockdown is lifted. We'll trace our local loop, learning the hedge by heart. We caught the best a day could bring, with a shower ending as the sun was settling deep into Connemara. A rainbow arched across the all of Mon Valley Bog. Holiday closures will stay this month, tight as a bud, while the snowdrops ring their shy white bells. By February, March, we may get the jab. If nothing else, sons of Narcissus will nod, cradling the lights we lost. This 5. It makes us pause, glance to see what is behind the whoosh in the road that might be wind or another engine. Pause then to quick step away and clear out of the road or marvel at a branch's nod. It is the same as the last walk or tomorrow's. Night, evening, morning are measures of light marking weather and seasons. Yesterday was wet day. Today, soft day, a gray one when the lake is the unwooded patch along the horizon, seeping into the sky. The earth shows its unhurried turn in the ivy, winter-heavy, clustered with berries. Wild marjoram has died back. Heuchera is a constellation of rust. Narcissus pokes up, finding nowhere to reflect underground. Come March, see it bloom by the river, head pendant, yellow crown. 7. Mind the foliage to let it die completely. Limp slag of ribbon, yellowing from green, takes its time to brown and crisp. Lazy rashers and summer skillet, not sun enough to make them sizzle. Only then will its purpose, the feeding of future flowers, be fulfilled, ugly as the present is. Here it is, January, and my mind is taken with the remains of spring bulbs yet to bloom. Future is all one has when present is masked into 5,000 meters and of fragile rubble. Future is the remnant of this present in bits, absolute bits. Fractured fear, year of shriveled funerals, virtual, you name it, school terms on again, off again, Zoom weary. These seasons wear us into the next, threadbare. We'll arrive at the threshold, stomping our stocking feet. 9. And so we paved our road, our failings the hell we make. 9,000 names stretch into a ribbon of mourning, sisters of mercy. Blinds are raised and shutters opened in a different custom of respect. The best disinfectant, they say, is sunshine. Daughters of charity. They dug out the septic tank of St. Mary's mother and baby home. The hoarded rubble of fetuses and babies' bones laid to disordered rest. Others haggled overseas to more hallowed mothers. Bon cœur. This happened in the New Republic, independent from one rule lashed to another. A corner of our daily loop is pinned by the workhouse burial ground. She died of a fever, and no one could save her. But they were buried under the soil and stars. Furs colonizes that field with its widely blooming yellow sparks. And I'm going to move now to the half a crown. St. Bridget's Eve. What is bright today are maize-colored ribbons of witch hazel, blossoms streaming against the oyster sky. At the church, we set 3 wicks to flame at Our Lady's alabaster feet, setting prayers off for the friend in stage 4 we'll Zoom with next week. I'll point my phone to show him the snowdrops and sweet box. I'll want to see if, as usual, he has wintered their kitchen into a hothouse of paper whites. Nothing is usual. He'll talk about women's basketball, which composer pulls him deeper. And when the talk turns to his wife, their sons, their babies, our smiles will struggle to witness light, the old one that flowers even in the dark. And this is called lean-to. When we moved, we didn't plan on it, but we have donkeys. So we have a store of feed for them. Lean-to. Hush of the hay shed, where slices of light limit the rain. It holds a thick quiet. I tell my partner, this is where I'll meditate. Without candle or burning incense. What dung-bound scent could be more worthy to offer than this once field folded into flakes, trussed with orange twine and a bale stacked 3 high? Nourishing shelter you are, a soft grotto, a grassy shrine without distraction. The storm-fast river and jackdaws are unheard here. As children, when we played sardines, that backward hide-and-seek, I would choose a closet shelved with out-of-season wool. The light wept in under the door. It was safe as our held breath. If our seekers had been diverted, how long would we have kept our silence? Laundry. How long would we have kept our silence in the camphor-spoilt air? Complicity tunneled into us, where larvae feeding on our fiber scattered our skin with their frass. Expert recommend we give hanging garments a good shake to disturb pests that thrive on stillness in the dark. A woman tells me she was cautioned not to talk about the mother and baby home where she turned for succor that stole her child away. Her story is not my stifled tale. Partner absconded from the waiting room for bacon and eggs while I was sucked out. I lied to brush off bruises, suitcase at the ready in the boot. Such was my silence. Was a good shaking all I needed? A hang on the line for the Ozo treatment will settle things all right. Rest my head on a sun-wrapped pillow tonight. Beltana. Rest my head on a sun-wrapped pillow tonight to coax an easy sleep. The fresh breeze does the drawing when the air is still cool. Fixing pegs on the line requires so little movement, blue tits pecking at the feeder aren't bothered. A birder says it's not that robins bear affection for us, but that we present no outright threat. Our harm filters to them through the slaughtered hedgerow, ridding their wild of food and shelter. What we take for beauty in their singing is a fierce claim, warning to enemies and rivals, not courting ballads. The pheasant's rusty shriek turns the lock of summer, not the cuckoo's come on of his name. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I'm going to read 2 more poems, and the first comes from, well, we had an event in our chimney last summer, and and then shortly after that I took a workshop with Jane Robinson, and she asked us to focus on birds, and this poem came out of that, both events. Inquest. Jackdaw, jackdaw, how did you die? Your one bright eye, ivory and clear, victim or bride under your wing, with her breast open bloomed, a turned spindle of spine. Jackdaw, jackdaw, what took your life? Did that one ivory eye see to this end? Did the victim trap you under her wing? Was your home place too big? Jackdaw, jackdaw. Your beak isn't charred, your feathers still shine. Jackdaw, jackdaw, what took your song? And this last poem I want to read, it was in the selection I submitted for last year's Court New Writing Prize, and I was very honored that Stephen Sexton chose it for second place, and it's in a manuscript that I've been polishing lately, for a full collection. Oh no, I'm reading 2 more poems, sorry. This is called Separate. I have lost the moon, its passage from coin to sickle, borrowed for slicing seasons into tercets, to a man made of darkness. Rain yawns with the Italian cypress from the west. The coast slurs. Not waiting for morning, the canyon's breath drops. Leaves scuttle, gray with marsupial habit, like possums under cars parked along the vestigial curb. A dry rain is blowing through my trees, and this month's egg carried with it a crush of blackberries. Nothing lives in this forest. Those eyes are the stars, cinching Orion's waist. And this last poem, that was my timer showing that I'm well under the time limit. I thought I had the stopwatch on, I had the wrong one. But this last poem's response to photographs of the missile attack on the station, Kramatorsk station in Ukraine last month. I know I'm not the only one who's been writing a lot in response to this tragedy. And this is taken about that, but also looking at one of the flags we see of Ukraine, not the large field of blue and yellow, but there's also one that shows the old coat of arms of Ukraine. So that's what I'm also seeing with this poem. Crest. See the trident, the white lines on the field of blue. It is not of the sea, but sky. Not a spear, but a falcon that arrived with the Vikings, drawn in thin abstraction of a bird of spirit. Body and wings descending, not rising. Trinity, not trident. Hard lines make a box of the bird, a vessel for breath. box of wheat fields, box of sky, box of flag waving wheat and sky, box of pine, many boxes when there was time for boxing the absence of spirit, when there was breath to bury each spirit for its singular breath. The box of the platform shattered. No boxes now, but bags, deflated, flattened like the bodies they barely cover. The sunken, denimed legs still as logs. The breath vanished. The boxes emptied. The bird, the bird, the bird. Thank you very much.
So I'll just say a few words about how the Food for Poetry project works. As I said, we tried to begin it first in 2003. Now we receive 80% of our funding. We're lucky to receive 80% of our funding from government sources, primarily through the Arts Council and Cork City Council, and they quite reasonably and responsibly expect organisations to generate a certain amount of funds themselves, to be not completely dependent on them. And in 2003, when we started the Poetry Project, it was before the advent of social media, and our marketing reach simply wasn't extensive enough to generate enough entries to pay for the project. So we tried for 2 years, and then we left it go into abeyance. And then when social media came along, we started it up again. And the first year of the revived period, we attracted enough entries to pay for the project, to pay for the prizes, to pay for the judges' fees, to pay for the production of the chapbooks. I think there were about 200 entries at that stage. We averaged about 330 entries a year. These days, there's an entrance fee that goes with it that helps to fund it, and now the project generates a modest profit that we can put into other projects at the centre. How it works is that I read all of the entries anonymously, and I select 10 or 12 of a shortlist. So once I've selected that 10 or 12, I then happen to know who those 10 or 12 people are. But I send along that shortlist to other judges in an anonymous stage. They don't know who the writers are at that stage. I think it's important for projects like this to not have too much power concentrated in the hand of one individual, so that's why we have this 2 stages of judging. The manuscripts that jump out at me really at the shortlist stage are manuscripts that show confidence and coherence and authority and voice and a strong grasp of technique and control over the line. Occasionally, 1 or 2 manuscripts will get onto the shortlist, which are 80% or 75% there, and which, if they don't win, they may suggest themselves to me as manuscripts that can go onto our New Irish Voices list of chapbooks with further editorial development. Jenny O'Halloran's and Cian Ferriter's manuscripts didn't need any editorial interventions from me. They were wholly realised when they came in the door. And a lot of people wonder, should I try and present a chapbook manuscript which is cohesive and thematically? And I know a lot of other publishers like to receive chapbook manuscripts like that, but for me, the priority really is to receive a manuscript where every single poem is strong. I don't care how cohesively they go together thematically, once they go together cohesively, structurally, and craftsmanship-wise. Cian Ferriter lives with his family in Dublin. He's been published in national and international poetry journals, including Southward, Crannog, Cyphers, The Honest Ulsterman, Poetry Wales, and The Lonely Crowd. He won the Westival International Poetry Competition in 2019, was a runner-up in the Gregory O'Donoghue International Poetry Competition 2020, and was shortlisted for the Troubadour International Poetry Competition in 2021. He's a poem anthologized in Local Wonders, the Daedalus anthology, a collection of poems responding to the pandemic. He's a former member of the Board of Poetry Ireland, and he's willing to come out of the closet now as a High Court judge since October 2021.
Thanks a million, Pat. It's a real pleasure to be here. Far more terrifying than walking out on the High Court bench, I can assure you. I want to start, if I might, just with some thanks. Thanks to Pat Cotter, the Munster Literature Centre, and James O'Leary, who's been working with Pat and is responsible for the really beautiful production values. And a pleasure to work with Pat and James, both fine poets in their own right, and of course it's institutions like the Munster Literature Centre and events like the Fools for Poetry that really do contribute to the life force that is poetry in the arts and in this jurisdiction. To thank the judges as well for their impeccable judging. That'll be known in law as a very biased view. Jamie, it was a privilege to hear your poems, Jamie, and to share the stage and the award with you. And congratulations to Timothy. Looking forward to his reading as well. I want to thank family and friends who've come down for the journey, most of them down from Dublin. I see Fergal across from Dingle and people from elsewhere. Particularly want to thank Vicky Morris, who actually won one of the Food for Poetry Awards last year, but wasn't, unfortunately due to COVID, able to come over and enjoy this type of event. Vicky was a great help we met a number of years ago on a course in Arvon, and has been a great help, and her excellent editorial eye was a great help in finalising a lot of the poems at the connection. I came to poetry reasonably late. I think my first published poem was at this time 3 years ago. It's been a journey of self-excavation, I have to say. I hadn't rashers about myself, I think, in truth, until I started writing the poems, and themes have recurred, as Pat touched upon. There's no particular overarching theme in my collection, but certainly there are recurring themes and streams. I suppose what makes us and what breaks us, and the fundamental and the elemental. But one of the things that really did come out of it for me was the fact that my parents, who are here today, and I'm delighted to be able to come to join in their celebration of this, they don't really feature at all overtly in the poems, but ours was a house of language, of ideas, of music, of performance, of debate, where a premium was put, I suppose, on the most valuable of things, all of which were non-material, it has to be said. Love and the resilience of the human spirit. So if it's possible to dedicate a reading, I don't know if that's allowed in the poetry world, this reading of these few poems is for them. I divided this, just mindful of the time, just into 5 short sections. The first one starts with the collection's title poem, Earth's Black Shoot. I haven't a clue what that means or what it's about. It's a slightly psychedelic kick-off. I suppose it is a form of launch into the underworld of the imagination, of our emotional being, all that lurks beneath. So I'm going to start with that and follow up with the second poem on that theme before moving to perhaps some more immediately accessible material. So this is called Shoot. No scratch of otter claw on stone, nor badger filling her set with ancient heat. No owl heart pulsing on a ledge of ash. So when, on this Atlantic headland, stepping around tight arguments of gorse, I stumble on a hare's still warm body, I kneel to press my ear to hers, to the noises of the underworld, murmurings and moanings taking flight, loosening of entrails and fire, stretch and snap of afterbirth, animal breath dripping from cave roofs, trapdoors swinging open, then shut, time's dark star collapsing into dusk, I slip headlong down Earth's black chute. And when I slip down Earth's black chute, I end up in places like the following poem, which starts out at the edge of a lake in West Kerry, and for some reason ends up in the Middle Ages on the Yangtze River. But that's the great thing about poetry. You don't need Michael O'Leary to get you there. So it's a poem called Snowball. I have fallen out of the world this February night and landed here at the march's edge, reeds about me like the masts of listening galleons. I can go no further. A newt flexes his crested spine like the dragon of the silk gown of the Emperor Zhu Di, he of perpetual happiness, as he watches what remains of his fleet limp into the swollen mouth of the Yangtze, mist rising, his eunuch entourage readying for retreat to the hills. His departure later marked by a single gong of the North Temple's bell, horse hooves disappearing into the wood, the moon a snowball breaking on a black roof and landing now 600 years on as droplets on my brow, my pallor, the Emperor's pallor, as he starts at a rustle in the undergrowth and contemplates for the first time the terror of death. Might lighten things slightly now. The next section is just a couple of poems on the theme of home. And one of the poems in the collection was my first published poem, which appeared in Crannog this time 3 years ago, just under 3 years ago. It's a very short poem. I had the pleasure of reading it at the launch of that issue of Crannog in the Crane Bar in Galway after a couple of pints, which is never advisable. And I think my introduction was about 15 times longer than the poem. So I'm going to try and avoid that this time round. And this is for Deirdre. It's called Hen. Evenings when you were not yet back, I'd sit on the makeshift bench in the yard of our first house, where you'd hung a line with room for just one dress, and close my eyes and wait for the breeze to lift your hem against my knees. That was our first house, bijou dwelling, I think is the estate agents might put it. And I want to read a poem now, which is based on my dad's house in the appropriately titled Castle Avenue in Thurles. I think you'll forgive me for saying it was a modest terraced house where myself and my siblings spent some fantastic holidays. So this poem is with that moment of realisation as a child, when you realise that adults, and in particular your granny, may have a life of her own. It's called Castle Avenue. Her house, though small, had rooms we did not have at home. The pantry, the scullery, the good room, all was locked. Her back to us mostly, poking the grate, stirring a pot, pulling her cardigan tight, woolen skirt running down to moleskin boots, glimpses of veiny calve like cathedral marble. The four of us children slept in the hollow of the bed in the spare room like oversized mice. Next to us on the landing, her room. I ran into it once for a dare. Dark wardrobe, window netting, dust motes like fuzz in the air. The shock of her there. wrinkled hand stubbing a saucer, smoke streaming from her nostrils, a life in her stare. So just continuing the theme of home, I'm going to read a couple of poems that are related to or inspired my two wonderful children, both of whom are here today. First, a couple of poems are for Chief, our daughter, who was always been in a rush to get on with things, get stuck into life, and this resulted in her arriving 6 weeks too early when we were down on holidays in Kerry. And this poem, the first poem, is called Limbo, and it relates to the moment when she first passed from care of the hospital into our care. It's called Limbo. The ward reduces to its midnight hush. A week since you were born, 6 weeks too soon, we keep vigil in this touchless limbo. Your face a miniature in distance, your fingers gripping invisible lines, Deirdre expressing to your silent cries. In the small hours, without a word, a nurse releases you into your mother's arms. Sensing your breath in that titanic hold, I wrap my shaking self around you both. So this next poem is thankfully a number of years later. It's called 1 week later, but it is a good few years later than the events of the first. The artificial flowers in the bottle on your bedroom table have started to grow. Plosives, soft gurgling, pulp displacing plastic. Last Tuesday, a tulip head beaded in dew. The bottle night cold to the touch. Wednesday, snowdrops bending their tender heads towards the garden. Yesterday, the branch of a birch clean through the wall above your bed. This morning, the window open. A chaffinch perched like a visitor from a Byzantine souk. Cinnamon, pistachio, gold, bearing news of memory, hope, light. The last poem in the home sequence, because when you have two children, it is eternally necessary to balance the sibling scales, is for our own little son. It's a poem really about mothers and their sons, and the fact that, as anyone who's a mother knows, or who has had a mother, mothers never stop worrying. It's also coincidentally about the night that Noah's Ark came to Glasnevin. It's called Ark. Rain, jungle rain, Niagaran rain, end of days rain, hammering the roof and you not home. 2 a.m, your mother worrying, still no sign of him. And me in bed beside her, smiling at the thought of you freewheeling past the Met Office. Rain shooting off its cupped satellite dishes. Down Washerwoman's Hill, no hands, your wheels throwing up water ski arcs of spray. Speeding up as you near the bridge, your spokes spinning like turbines, your glowing face lifted to the deluge, your hair streaming like a comet's tail, as you take to the air, clear the bulwark and land, sliding on the deck of the Ark, giraffes and ocelots scattering, the scent of cedar unloosed where you stop, feet from Noah, who shakes his head from under a yellow sou'wester as he turns the prow for Drumcondra and beyond for Ararat, the sky brightening to the east as you leap into the garden, the rain easing and your mother slipping into the deepest of sleeps. Jamie read a moving poem on the theme of Ukraine, and I found war a recurring theme in when I was taking up the pen as well. This is a poem based on the Taliban in Afghanistan, but I suppose it resonates with what we're seeing unfold in recent months and as eternity unfolds. And what humans who otherwise have deep connections are capable of doing to one another. So this is called Team Photo, Hindu Kush, Afghanistan, 1992. After the Taliban, under a barrel in the village square, 6 amputated hands. I played football there once, posed afterwards, thumbs up, peace upon us as our jeep moved on. I find the picture curled in an attic box, study its jury of faces one by one, shy, wary, ebullient. Who now dresses with one arm? Who held whom in place as the blade came down? So the next couple of poems are pandemic related. As Jamie touched upon as well, it was a time of great profusion, I think, of writing, both poetically and otherwise, in that period. Some of these are very obliquely pandemic related, but I think they probably all touch upon the theme of liberation in confinement. So I just read you a couple of eclectic poems on that theme. The first is called Ghost Ship. I have seen your house adrift in the strangest of places. In Cassidy's top field, smoke spilling from the chimney. In a clearing in Hartigan's wood, wet shirts hanging between 2 pines. Against the stump of the keep beyond Moran's, the crooked gable end taking rain. And one night, jutting out over the lip of the quarry, a light on in the kitchen, the whole place teetering. This morning, in thinning mist, it is back where you last left from it. Lace curtains neatly parted, lavender turning to spit, crab apples popping in the grass, the gate latch rattling like a freshly turned prayer wheel. Garden shed. Through the shed's squat door, I am back to a tower block in East Berlin before the fall, where every night at 10, the state-employed caretaker with a B-movie limp locked our flat door from the outside, and where, at midnight, the man in the flat above dropped empty beer bottles onto the concrete plaza below, glass exploding as he roared expressions in old German, consisting, we learned later, of a series of agricultural curses directed largely at his mother. Our door unlocked again at dawn, although by whom we never saw. And this is the third and last poem in the pandemic-related sequence. It's called Starting Over. The witching hour, when sleep rises up but stops below our bank, and you lie there exposed to what was hidden by the day. Night twitches, polyps with intent. As I walk the dog on wet streets, stare up at top-floor windows for sudden silhouettes, wondering what torments is swirling beneath duvets and tossed sheets. Men in half-lit cubes click and scroll, enlarge, delete, grow old. A boy climbs into his mother's bed. Skinny girls adjust their camera phones. A fox walks down the centre of the road, looking for a dream to enter. A police car slows behind, slaps on its siren, disports itself further into the chasm. The dog cocks his leg. I light a cigarette, knowing you are lighting a cigarette, and dawn will soon see through, your hair brushing my face, our breath bobbing, adrift on the same mild swell. So just a couple of poems to go now. The second last section, indeed all these remaining poems, it come back, I think, in some shape or form to the theme of family This poem is called Keeper, and it's based on a story told by a good friend about an incident he had with his farmer, or his father, I should say. And I suppose the theme that this tries to excavate is the father and son relationship. And I think there's a gentleness in it which I hope is a trait that I've got from my own father. It's called Keeper. Sure, I'd best do it myself. The words from your silhouette at the front door at Crewbawn, morning light settling around you, the boyne beyond bending the earth. By the time I follow you out, arms puckered with stings, you are high up the alder tree, head lost in a swarm of bees, like a man leaning into a hatch. Thunderclap as your box slaps closed, left neat by the front step as you recede into the yard. Later, your dusty red Datsun pushing off down the avenue, bees flooding the back window like coins pouring into a hold. This next poem is about, in a very loose way, is about my dad's brother, who is a man who likes his own company, a gentle but independent soul. It's a poem about an event involving a bull and a ruined abbey that I thought was entirely imagined until I brought a copy of the chapbook out to my mum and dad, and it transpired that the event actually did happen. It had been buried completely in my memory, save for one slightly important detail, which is that my uncle wasn't there. And the title of the poem is My Uncle the Recluse, so it's probably fitting enough that he wasn't in fact there. But he is in the poem, so I'll read it, whether he was there physically or in spirit. My Uncle the Recluse. Not in the guidebooks, that ruin, no signs or gravel path. My father and the others in the roofless rectangle where the monks once vespered. Candled sycamores, crusted cowpats, yellowing grass, the usual. I had wandered round the back, naming off the breeds, Hereford, Charley, Kerry Blue, when the bull made for me, all haunch and shuddering neck, too big and gleamy for himself. I tried to roar, but no sound emerged, until two hands like warm stones fix my shoulders. Stand your ground, he'll not breach that fence. My uncle. A row of flowering thistles between us and the barbed wire spikes, and, I'm sure of it, steam rising from the bull's nostrils, his ring a chieftain's torque. Shouts from the abbey, jackdaws swooping from a copse, and later, the whole journey back, my uncle tight beside me, staring out at small fields, scattering rooks. So I'm going to come to my last poem, so thank you very much for being such an attentive audience. This is, I suppose, a poem on one of the recurring themes, not alien to the world of poetry, obviously, is the need for the journey west, but the journey that brings you back to yourself, that brings you back to love. While this is based loosely on my early meetings with Deirdre, my wife, it is really a poem from my mother, I think, in terms of her being the family pioneer when it came to bringing us out all to the Wild West growing up. So it's called West. You took me further west, out past Ballinbullet, under a sky of milk and pewter and blue eggs. In the rusting Mitsubishi coat you dubbed the Silver Bullet. A day's gallivanting led us to an off-road inlet, seaweed marmalading the black shore, the sea cresting like blown free bunting. You clowned about in rocks, your parka 2 sizes too big, your hands swallowed by its sleeves, the lightning strips of your legs earthed in black docks. I took a photo of you loose and skittish under a hawthorn, eyes crossed, tongue hanging sideways, your head lassoed by the hood's furry noose. On the beach near where we stayed, I fell over attempting a handstand, surfaced dizzy in the storm soar of your laugh, lay on you, eyes closed as the light began to fade. You took me further west, to where I had not been before, to where I fell downways, sideways, headlong, into your hidden, thumping nest.